Welcome back to another episode of Trial Bite Podcast. I'm Jason. This is Mariana, and today we're diving into something that's making waves in the beauty industry, especially the sunscreen industry. There was an article with Choice that put up a list of different sunscreen brands, and a dispute has arisen with Ultraviolet, especially that the SPF is not as high as it's being claimed. Mariana, what's your take on all of this?
So, as a user of ultraviolet and many different sunscreens over however long ago I started using sunscreen daily, I am a bit concerned about these kinds of claims because I always opt for 50 plus because of the protection that I hope it is offering me. But I'm also a bit skeptical because I feel like we need more information, which we'll get into, about how they came about getting these results and how are there so many different outcomes that have come about from this. So I do think it's an important topic that we need to talk about because sunscreen and sun protection is so important in Australia. And I think people are becoming more and more aware of how much it is needed to protect yourself from melanoma, or even just general skin damage. So yeah, it's something that's been really piquing my interest lately.
Yeah, for sure. So to really deep dive into it, I have the article in front of me, and it was on the 12th of June 2025, so not that long ago. Choice stated that, and I quote, "The most significant failure of the 20 products that we tested was ultraviolet lean screen, SPF 50 plus, mattifying zinc skin screen, which returned an SPF of 4. So a lot of these products, all 20 of them, advertise as SPF 50 plus, but the lowest score was ultraviolet with a score of 4. They were so shocked by the result that they decided to test it in a different batch in one of their testing labs in Germany. And that second set of results also reported that the SPF of 5, which was almost identical to the allegedly rigorous initial test conducted. So they obviously called on the TGA, which is, what is the full form of TGA?
The Therapeutic Goods Administration?
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's right. And the ACCC to conduct their own compliance testing and investigate potential misleading SPF claims.
So we should probably touch on Choice's testing methodology.
Yeah.
When they went about making these claims, they purport to have tested the sunscreens by sending them to an external laboratory that was approved by the TGA. And the lab uses our Australian New Zealand standards as well as the international standards to verify these claims. And the testing involved things such as blind testing all products on a panel of 10 adult participants, decanting the sunscreen into amber glass jars which block UV light and prevent ingredient breakdown, because something else that's important to note is that once the product comes out, like a lot of products, the packaging is so important because it essentially stops the product from destabilizing. Once it's out of that packaging, if it's not used correctly, or if it's not in the right thing, like an amber glass jar, to prevent that further breakdown of the product or destabilization, then it can affect the outcome of the use of the product. What Choice also did was expose both protected and unprotected skin areas to calibrated solar simulators designed to imitate the spectrum of sunlight, and they applied a control sunscreen with a known SPF to validate the results. Then they scored the sunscreens based on how closely they met their SPF claims.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it sounds like they really did a proper test, like they had a methodology going on.
Well, SPF testing is actually also very expensive.
Right.
So, and I mean, they're quite a well-known group. They've got a pretty good reputation. I don't think they would have put their money behind this for no reason. And again, they claim that the labs are TGA approved. They've even gone out of their way to send them to another lab
in Germany,
and it's hard to completely knock the article just off the testing that they've said that they've undergone. Again, we need more information coming out from it, but yeah, it is interesting.
So when the article was published, obviously it got a lot of media attention. So it hit the new influencer world of beauty specialists and TikTok and Instagram. A lot of influencers were talking about it. A lot of people were shocked that they were using their products, and then they started to, feel like, oh my gosh, I've been using this specific sunscreen for 3, 4, 5 years, and then it's not been advertised as SPF 50. And if it's true, that means that all the years I've actually been rigorous and applying sunscreen every day, it's all gone to waste. So, for example, my partner, I told her about this last night, and I said, "What sunscreen do you use?" Because I recognized the color of the
bottle,
ultraviolet,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
It was like blue.
The branding is very
with the gold
distinct.
yellow light, yeah. And she showed me, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, do you know this happened?" And she had no idea. So some people still don't know that this is happening. And yes, like she doesn't use it a lot. Obviously, her go-to is La Roche Posay, yeah, which is, I think, one of the best testing one.
Yeah.
So she didn't have the same problem, but imagine a lot of people don't know, and they find out that they've been using an X product for so long, and it turns out to be faulty. Yeah.
And I think the thing as well is, with this particular product that apparently allegedly doesn't meet its claim, it's a mineral sunscreen, which.
Right.
So in addition to people opting for 50 plus, there are some people that are skeptical of chemical sunscreens because they just think that those, like the chemicals that are used in chemical sunscreens, even though sometimes offer better protection, they are worried about the side effects of those chemicals. So they opt for things like mineral sunscreens, which is like a natural sunscreen.
Mm-hmm. So
that's especially problematic for people who have opted for this particular product based on a few different descriptions, but especially with its 50 plus and wanting to still get that more natural sunscreen.
Yeah.
It is quite concerning that consumers are, having to wake up to potentially. Also, it's like it's an expensive product. It's not cheap. It's over $50 a product. Yeah. I've bought ultraviolet consistently for a while, and I mean I swap between my sunscreens depending on what I'm feeling like, but all my sunscreens are 50 plus because I want the most protection I can have out of a sunscreen. So people also want to know that they're not wasting their money as consumers.
Exactly, yeah.
But most importantly, that they're getting the protection that they want in a climate like where we are. So, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously with the media outbreak of the news on the article getting a lot of traction, Ultraviolet had to respond. So they responded.
Yep.
And I have their response here. I think it was first a video by like one of the co-founders.
Yes.
But then there was also the official written statement. And so they did 4 things. I think firstly they kind of questioned the accuracy of the choice testing and their methodology and their basis for the claim.
Yeah.
And they say, and I quote, "They do not accept these results as even remotely accurate." And they claim that its lean screen product contained 22.75% zinc oxide, and the SPF result of 4 was scientifically impossible. Because, I mean, obviously they do their own testing before releasing a product, so they would have
they brought it up on on the TikTok that one of the co-founders released.
Yeah,
she's actually put up screenshots of their testing,
right?
Where it's shown that a lot of them had like SPF averages of 60.
Right.
But 50 plus takes into account anything that goes over that.
Yeah.
So she's shown that, and they've also attached the results, those reports with the testings verified, to the website and to the statement, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, and the second thing they said was it criticized the advocacy group for testing to what it says was a small batch of the product and 2 blind tests with a very small sample size and not substantial in comparison to the extensive rounds of testing that they did. They also highlighted that they have already conducted 3 independent tests on the product, and Ultraviolet stated that the product has achieved a mean SPF value of 64, like you just mentioned, and that is also it's a requirement for that to go through that kind of testing and to be listed on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the 4th reason was Ultraviolet emphasized that the recognized authority governing sunscreens in Australia is the TGA and not Choice Magazine. alluding to the fact that there is regulations and legal ramifications of them not testing and putting out a product that is not properly tested.
Yeah.
So for them to even get past the TGA and get approval, they would have had to provide accurate evidence of testing. Yeah.
And that's all expensive. Like brands put a lot of money, especially into these kinds of things where they need like regulatory approval.
Correct.
To get this over the line and make sure that this can be legally supplied in Australia, because you can't actually legally advertise a 50 plus sunscreen. Or no, I think you can advertise a legally 50 plus sunscreen. I actually do have a sunscreen from W Cosmetics. It's this Korean skincare store that probably, again, your girlfriend probably knows.
I know, yeah.
I have
very well.
She's made you go through and like
we've
get
done an unboxing here.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh, we should go together with your girlfriend. I'd love that. And do a haul.
Yeah.
So I've actually got a couple Korean sunscreens from there. And I noticed the other day that they don't have the listing on the product.
Right.
So I just think that means that it hasn't gone through TGA approval. But I feel like that, having that regulatory approval really solidifies like that it's a therapeutic good and that its intention is to provide UV protection, which is why I try to probably opt more for something that's listed as opposed to unlisted. But then I also trust Korean skincare, Anyways, we're going on a tangent.
Yeah.
So
going back to the TGA obviously got involved as well. So they put out statements immediately on the 12th and 19th of June saying that they'll investigate Choice's findings, because they obviously have to step up and take a bit of responsibility as well, because for their product to come out, that means they went through TGA. So the TGA also has to investigate these claims that Choice are making. And in summary, the TGA obviously has to maintain that, the primary purpose of a sunscreen is for UV protection.
Yeah.
The sunscreen labels should be truthful and not misleading, which we'll get into it a bit more. And there are legislative requirements and obviously testing requirements the TGA has to go through. And so basically, before we just jump into our discussion about the legal and the law stuff, what can you tell us about? I think we've already touched on what SPF is and what sunscreens are. But what's your kind of experience with it? What do you think the TGA should really look into when it comes to the dispute like this?
So, in response to Choice's claims, the TGA has said that therapeutic sunscreens need to meet all the legal requirements for therapeutic goods before they can be supplied in Australia. And therapeutic sunscreens, for our listeners, and as per the TGA's website, include primary sunscreens, which are primarily used for protection from UV radiation, and some secondary sunscreens, which are products with a primary purpose other than sun protection, that also contain sunscreening agents. For example, like sunbathing. I'm also guilty of using keratin, which is another thing that probably your girlfriend knows. They stock it at Chemist Warehouse. They have like tanning oils and stuff. I probably shouldn't be promoting that. But they have SPF in them, but the primary purpose is not sun protection, it's a tanning oil.
Right.
So kind of those kind of products. So these sunscreens that do get listed on the register must be manufactured by a TGA-approved manufacturing facility to be supplied in Australia. And the sponsor of the therapeutic sunscreen, like Ultraviolet or like Cancer Council, anyone that's on this list, must ensure that the therapeutic sunscreens are listed medicines and the product includes only pre-approved ingredients and pre-approved indications.
Yeah.
The product meets testing and labeling requirements provided in our standards for sunscreen products. The product meets manufacturing quality standards, and the product meets all other therapeutic goods legislative requirements such as labeling and advertising. So, under the Therapeutic Goods Advertising Code, an advertisement for these kinds of therapeutic goods or any therapeutic good, but including sunscreen, must be accurate, balanced, not misleading or likely to be misleading. It must only contain information substantiated by the advertiser prior to publication or dissemination. It can't contain any statement or pictorial representation that expressly or implicitly represents that the goods are safe or without harm or side effects. And finally, they mustn't contain any statement or pictorial representation that expressly or by implication is inconsistent with the label, such as an SPF claim that is 50 and it's less than that, or exaggerates or is likely to exaggerate inappropriate or excessive use of the goods. So under the Therapeutic Goods Act, there are general advertising offences and offences related to non-compliance with the advertising code. So if an advertisement contains false or misleading representations, such as overstating the SPF content of your product, it may be considered a prohibited or restricted representation. So importantly, for an advertising offence to be made out, it must be proven that the use of the goods in reliance on the advertisement has resulted in or will result in likely harm or injury to any person, or would result in or would be likely to result in harm or injury to any person. So following on from these, if the TGA does find evidence of non-compliance with the Act, they have access, kind of similar to the ACCC with their enforcement pyramid.
Right.
Various enforcement measures, including issuing a public warning notice, infringement notices, warning letters, directions, or even enforceable undertakings on the entity. They can suspend or cancel the registration of that product or the listing of the non-compliant good. They can conduct market actions such as product recalls, and in more serious cases, which is yet to be seen, but probably maybe not in this case, they can seek injunctions or court orders against the company to pay pecuniary penalties for contravening civil penalty provisions.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of responsibility for the TGA. I mean, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's actually so much law related to false and misleading claims that are made every day. I mean, we see it at our firm.
Yeah.
I've had a chance to work on one of them, and I think,
Tell us more about that.
yeah, I think with a lot of it comes to the ACL, so
Yep.
the Australian Consumer Law, specifically Section 18, which is misleading and deceptive conduct. So no business that intends to deal in trade and commerce, i.e., business selling any product, can falsely make a claim for something like being SPF 50 plus, and then it turns out to be not SPF 50 plus. Then that means that it is false and misleading a group of consumers. So
Yep.
the ACL Section 18 basically covers everything. So that's from the claims made on websites to the labeling on a package. So Ultraviolet, if it is found out to be true, would obviously be open to some of the legislation that they would face under this provision. It is quite a broad provision, but I think there are a few key questions that need to be asked. So firstly, would an ordinary or reasonable member of the target audience be misled by what is being said?
Yeah.
Second is important information left out from the consumer target group? And then thirdly is that, did you back up the advertising claims with facts, studies, or reasonable evidence?
Yeah.
The good thing about this, in this case, is that Ultraviolet has publicly allowed consumers to go on their website, download their testing manuals, their guides, the information, the fact sheets, all of that.
It's
So
very transparent.
correct. So in that third question, they're definitely very transparent with it. So something like this, the claim would obviously focus on the representation being the key word, which is that SPF 50 or not.
Yeah.
And that becomes the key statement to figure out if it's being misleading or deceptive. The advertising of it being SPF 50 plus clearly falls within the scope of the ACO. So
Yep.
there's no problems there. And I think that obviously it's very early stage of this. Ultraviolet is saying no, it's definitely tested that we average 60 plus. Choice is saying no, we've done 4 and we've done 5. They're really low scores. So we're very early to get into what consumers are going to say and if they have a legal basis or claim
Yep.
going forward. I think something else that's really interesting is that the ACL also covers under Section 236 that a person who suffers loss or damage as a result of a misleading or deceptive conduct may recover damages. So that's when I alluded to the fact that if this continues on and it's found out that it's not SPF 50 plus, ultraviolet would have a lot of would be kind of open to a lot of consumers having the right to claim that they've been using a product that is being misleading,
Yep.
just because of that one statement of SPF 50 plus.
Yep.
I think another recent case that I just saw very probably last month is a brand called Edgewell PCC. It's an American brand, but they have an Australian subdivision that's been filed proceedings in the federal court by the ACCC for misleading and deceptive conduct claim, which they claim that their product sunscreen as well was reef friendly,
Right.
but it was found out in testing that they actually had used ingredients that causes harm to reefs, and they technically can't make that claim. So that is something as an example that would fall under Section 18.
Wow.
And then, the ACL also has this statutory warranties, which, I mean, you as you know, there's Section 54, Section 55 that kind of helps the consumer guarantees. That's in every terms and conditions that we all usually skip over.
You can't get rid of that in a contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we go and for any product that we buy online, anything that we physically, I think anything that's dealt with trade and commerce would always have some sort of guarantees in it. So that's usually in those small little wordings that we all skip over, and then we click accept terms and conditions. I think that's usually what we do when we buy stuff, especially online now. And I think it's really interesting because there's obviously a manufacturer, and there's a retailer, and then there's the final consumer, right? And it's hard to see whose fault it is. So for example, if a manufacturer makes a product and it's sold to the supplier, but they've accidentally put a wrong ingredient in, or they haven't been fully rigorous in their testing, and the supplier sold it, then the consumer only sees the supplier, right? They're going to come to the supplier and claim, you said SPF 50 plus, that's what we advertised, and it's not been that way. In this case, it's a bit more unique because ultraviolet, from my understanding, is both the manufacturer who did the testing, but also the supplier.
Yeah.
What can happen is, for example, a brand like any brand that sells a retail store, for example, Maya, Sephora, Shop in Westfield, W Cosmetics, whatever sells, they would be that supplier in the middle stage.
Yeah, Mecca.
Yeah. So Section 54 requires all 3 stages for it to be fit for all purposes for which goods of that kind are commonly supplied, safe and durable as a reasonable consumer would expect. And Section 55 it establishes a consumer guarantee that goods supplied in trade and commerce must be reasonably fit for any disclosed purpose or purpose for which the supplier represents they are reasonably fit. So it's just protections for a consumer, really. That's how it sum it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about in the context of the SPF claims on sunscreen?
Well, I mean, it's good that we have these kinds of laws in place so that when you are buying things that, when you buy it on the basis of something particular, like I buy my sunscreens based on the fact that they have 50 plus.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that there is a guarantee that is a 50 plus. So when we have recourse in the law, for example, if we've been misled to buy a product that, or not misled, but represented that a certain product is something that it's not, it's good that we have these guarantees to fall back on to get some sort of recourse to it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think the consumer guarantees are so important because you never just like my example I gave earlier in our conversation. Like, imagine finding out just today that you've been using something for so long, and then it comes out to be something that was advertised to you but not even true. So and just to wrap up the legal side of thing, I think basically what the ACL covers for in the sense of actually being able to make a claim and damages is two big categories in their schedule. So one is minor failures. So that's obviously things that the supplier has the option to either fix, repair the issue.
Yeah.
And if they refuse or they can't do that, then within a reasonable time, they have to issue a refund. And then the major failure is obviously when things are substantially either not working, broken, or cannot be fixed, or very different from the description. Then the consumer is able to reject the goods and then recover compensation.
Yeah.
So those are the main two categories how people would claim. And I think ultraviolet, depending on how this goes, could either fall into a minor failure, a major failure, or no failure at all.
Yeah.
So it's very early to call.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays
Yeah,
out. And if the
100%.
TGA, the findings of the TGA, because they're undergoing their own investigations now. So probably interesting to keep track of.
Correct. I think that they, as a more of a middle objective body, they would have the final say. And then similar like the Edgewell PCC example I gave, it could be, it could be a class action with many people involved, or lots of consumers come together to make that claim, or it could even be done by the ACCC.
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows what's going to happen?
We'll see. I mean, they've done a really good job at responding to it.
Oh, yeah.
They've made a lot of effort. I mean, it's also a massive PR thing as well, like brand reputation, and they've built such a solid consumer base that I think a lot of people are also disappointed. But I think everyone should, hold their horses a bit and wait for things to come out, because we don't really know 100% at this stage. But yeah, also I hope this doesn't discourage people from using sunscreen. That's another concern of mine, because everyone was like, oh, been using it. Is there even a point? Like, do we even know now who is making legitimate claims? I mean, we don't know if they've not made a legitimate claim of SPF 50 plus, but it does start to undermine trust in products that we do need to be using, especially in Australia, where we have such high UV radiation and actually the highest rates of skin cancer in the world. So
yeah, so true.
We need to make sure that this doesn't also implicate people's perceptions of using sunscreen as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, we could talk about this for hours, but I think we've given the audience a lot to think about. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.